Go.
Oh. If he sold one of them, he is exempt, and the other he must treat as truma. It is liable to chala. So says Rebbeah. But Rav Yossi exempts if another person sold the other, he is exempt. If one sold both, it is if a kind whose seed perishes. It is permitted, but if of a kind that whose seed does not perish, it is forbidden. If a woman was eating truma, and they came and said to her, "Your husband is dead," or "He divorced you," or likewise a slave who was eating truma, and they came and said to him, "Your master is dead," or "Your master has sold you to a non-priest," or "He has given you away as a gift," or "He has freed you," and likewise if a priest was eating truma, and it became known that he was the son of a divorced woman or a chalutza, Reb Eliezer holds them liable to the repayment of the value and a fifth. But Reb Shua exempts. If he was standing and sacrificing on the altar, and it became known that he was the son of a divorced woman or of a chalutza, Reb Eliezer says all of the sacrifices which he offered on the altar are invalid. But Reb Yeshua declares them valid. If it became known that he has a blemish, his ministration is invalid.
So the difference here. Okay. So first of all, there's an interesting question over here is how is it that that somebody can come and inform a woman, your husband's divorced you? Like, wouldn't she know?
Right, right.
Because she has to accept the get in order to be divorced. She can't be divorced without her knowledge. That's not possible. So the Yerushalmi asks this question, and if she had, and it also says that if she'd sent a shaliach, maybe she sent a shaliach to receive her get. But if she
Mhm.
sends a shaliach to receive a get, then she has to stop eating truma immediately because she doesn't know when her shaliach is going to receive the get. So why should there be any dispensation given for her because she just didn't know? Okay, if her husband died, yeah, okay, so then she wasn't expecting that, and that's when we can have this discussion. So they narrow it down to a case where she sent a shaliach and said, "I want you to get my get specifically in such and such a place." And so there we said that she's allowed to eat truma until the amount of time it would take for the shaliach to get to such a place. Okay. And if however somehow she gets word, and this is perhaps more applicable to the information age that we're in, where you've got the worldwide instant communications, where the shaliach somehow got a fast plane or got a fast connection or somehow got into the destination in an unexpectedly short time and received the get, and then called back to say, "Listen, I got your get." Phone back
Yeah.
and or sent a WhatsApp. Okay, so this is perhaps one of these cases where the Mishnah could not have made sense back in an early days, but
Right.
in modern times it's actually quite applicable.
I was thinking more of like it was uh, um, he divorced you, like a question almost. He divorced you, like what are you doing here? What are you doing with
But
this?
no, but if she forgot, then that's a shock egg.
Right.
But we're talking about a case where it was an honest, where it's comparable to a woman who's she's a Bas Yisrael, but she's married to a Kohen and she's eating truma, and then somebody comes and tells her your husband died, and she didn't know. She Pasha didn't know, and that's why we have a shaila here, where is she chayav keren v'chomesh? I mean, if she was doing b'shogeg, nobody's going to argue that she's chayav.
Hmm.
Right? Nobody can argue that. It's only if it was like mamish and honest, where she had no idea that her husband was dead.
I was thinking
So,
more,
and
the divorce part. Like, how could you forget that you were divorced? I mean,
she's
that's a
not
big.
gonna. It's not that's exactly the point. Is that it's not that she forgot that she is divorced. She just didn't know that she was divorced. And that's why the question is so weird. Like, how can you have such a case of a of a woman who doesn't know that she's divorced? She's got to be
Right.
there to accept her get. She's got to
That's
be
right.
of sound mind
Right.
in order to accept it.
Right. Right.
Okay, so anyway, that's the one interesting thing, and then they bring it into the analogous cases of the Kohen who's doing avoda in the Beis Hamikdash, and they say, listen, we just checked out your lineage, or your father just admitted that he married a chalutza or garusha, and now you're not a Kohen. So now what's his din? But in the last sentence it says if he's informed that he's a Baal Mum, if he suddenly realizes that he's a Baal Mum, well, that's something he should have checked for before he started the avoda.
Right. Right. Right.
So
For
that
sure.
so that's a negligence on his part, and that's why in that case everyone agrees that his avoda is pasul. Okay.
And, and okay. Here we are. And all of them, if they had truma in their mouths, Rabbi Eliezer says they may swallow it, but Rabbi Yeshua says they must spit it out. And if they said to him, "You have become unclean," or the truma has become unclean, Rabbi Eliezer says he may swallow it. But Rabbi Yeshua says he must spit it out. You were unclean, or the truma was unclean, or it became known that it was tevel, or ma'aser rishon from which truma had not been taken, or ma'aser sheni, or a hektish that had not been redeemed, or he tasted the taste of a bug in his mouth, he must spit it out.
So you see the difference over here is that Rabbi Eliezer is saying that when it comes to truma, and he's eating truma be'isur and didn't realize. So once it's been in his mouth, says Rabbi Eliezer, it's already lost to the Kohanim, and he's going to be chayav to pay it back anyway. So why should he waste the truma? Nobody's going to eat it after he's had it chewing in his mouth. Okay, so he's going to say, okay, so swallow it. Rabbi Yeshua says you got to spit it out. Why have you got to spit it out? Because even though nobody else is going to eat it, it's still ra'oi for him. And what do you say? Flot. Wait. Well, Cohen should not allow you ben Grusha ben Chalotza. Let's see. Why does he say Flot? I'm just looking for the reasoning in the Kahati over here. So Rabbi Yeshua says that the person that something that's being chewed is not as if it's swallowed. It's not the same as if it's swallowed. And since it's asur for him to eat it, then he shouldn't swallow it. Okay, and however, they're all in agreement that if the food was always asur to him, that it was something that was tevel, or it was had all of the categories of things, or a bug. Just because it's in your mouth doesn't mean you should swallow it. And even Rabbi Eliezer agrees to this, is that there was never a shas heter, there was never a havamina that could be mutar. So even he would agree that you have to spit those out. Okay. Today's Mishnah is Gimel. Haya ochel be'eshkol. So there's a guy who's walking, who was walking in the field, and he picked a bunch of grapes and he is eating them casually. Remember, we said that for Terumos and Mastros, you're allowed to eat casually in the field.
Right.
So he's busy picking off the grapes and walking home, and then he realizes he's walked from the field, and he now walks into his front yard, and his chatzer, this is part of his house, which is immediately kovea for Mastros. Rabbi Eliezer Amer Yigmor. He says no, he can finish. He started eating this bunch of grapes beheter, so let him finish them beheter. What he actually means is not that he can carry on in the chatzer, but he can walk out of the chatzer and carry on eating them in the field, because once he started eating that cluster in the field, it's considered arai, and even if he walks into his yard, it doesn't change the state. Whereas Rabbi Yeshua Omer lo yigmor, the moment he walks into his chatzer, boom, there's a chiyuv of Terumos and Mastros that's chal on those grapes, and he's no longer allowed to eat them arai. He has to take Terumos and Mastros before he can carry on eating. Okay, similar case, chash chalele Shabbos. So we also said another thing that happens is that Shabbos is kovea Terumos and Mastros. So if somebody picked something in the field and he left it, let's say he left it in the field because he realized, okay, it's getting to be Shabbos. So now when he comes out again, he says, oh, let me carry on. So this again is going to, well, as soon as Shabbos comes in, let's say he stays out in the field before, and he davens Mariv out in the field, and he makes Kiddush out in the field. Can he carry on eating those grapes? No, he can't, because now it's Shabbos, and Shabbos is kovea for Terumos and Mastros, so there's no more arai. Even though it's been picked and he was eating them before Shabbos came in, now he's got to stop until Terumos and Mastros are taken, which he can't do on Shabbos anyway. So he has to wait. So those grapes are going to immediately be made to become muktzah. Now, what happens about Motzei Shabbos? Do those grapes revert to their previous state? Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yigmor, yes. Rabbi Eliezer says after Shabbos he can carry on eating those grapes that he was eating out in the field. Rabbi Yeshua Omer lo yigmor. Sorry, Shabbos came and it fixed it. Once it's become a chayav in Terumos and Masros, then after Shabbos it doesn't revert. So it's a consistent position that Rabbi Yeshua has, is that once something has become chayav in Terumos and Masros, it doesn't revert to becoming arai. Where Rabbi Eliezer says no, it can. If you just return it to its state where it was before, whatever was chal, whatever made the chiyuv chal. So whether it's walking into your chatzer or where the Shabbos is coming in either case, Rabbi Eliezer says no, you can revert back. But the halacha follows Rabbi Yeshua.
I'm sure that's what I was looking at. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Okay. Dalet yayin shel truma sheniskala. Now, this is where we introduce the concept of giloi. Where the three liquids that become asr because they've been left open. That's wine, milk, and water. Okay, that's if they are. There's a. It's an interesting thing because the reason given is because maybe a snake came and drank from it and injected some venom into the liquid. Okay, in terms of a naturalistic or rationalistic position, it's completely untenable because snakes don't do that.
Oh, they don't?
Okay. Snakes inject venom into their victims. They do not inject venom into the liquids that they drink. It just doesn't happen. That's not what they do. Venom is for killing their prey. Okay. Secondly, it doesn't make sense for any place where there aren't any snakes, but nonetheless they have this giloi. So the Vilna Gaon explains about this that the whole inyan of giloi is a completely spiritual thing. It's and Chazal didn't want people to be mazalzel in it. They didn't want people to be makil on it because so they decided to scare people. So they said it's because of snakes. So therefore you're not allowed to have my megulin or yain megulin. Okay. So that's our background to this halacha. If you take the halacha of the Vilna Gaon, it's that it's nothing to do with snakes. That's just a fabrication that Chazal made in order to keep people in line. Okay.
I'm laughing because one of the people who taught me, when I was starting out the whole thing, so he says he keeps his bottle of wine on the table overnight. It should be kept out. It's a red wine and it should be kept out so that
open so it can breathe.
And he puts the cork on top of it in
Yeah.
case a snake or something would come by. So I've been doing that for years, and now you're telling me this. I mean, we have any snakes in the house, Baruch Hashem, but
No, so I mean, giloi is a halacha.
Right.
Look, a lot of people, a lot of contemporary poskim. Well, I don't know. It may be a political thing in terms of a sort of a modern rationalistic thing that they say that it no longer applies. And some people say no, it still does apply, and follow. Even if there aren't any snakes in our houses, it still applies for the reasons given by the Vilna Gaon.
Right.
Okay, so Tachlis, the Mishna is talking now about what happens when you have a conflict over here. Truma, you're not allowed to waste.
Right.
But what happens if you have yain shel truma sheniskala? You had wine of truma that was left open. Yishapech, the sakana wins out. Okay, you got to pour out the wine so nobody can drink it. And obviously chulin wine you have to pour out if it's left open.
Right.
Okay, if you're even doing it for truma. Shlosh amashkin asurin mishum gilai. There are three liquids that are prohibited because of being left open. Hamayim yain v'chalab. That's wine, water, wine, and milk. Shar kol hamashkin nutarim. Anything else is not affected by giloi. Okay. Kama yishu v'yu asurin. How long do you have to leave it open before it becomes asur? Basically enough time that the creepy crawly thing, i.e. the snake, could come out from its hiding place and drink and then disappear. Lamase, nowadays I think I asked the halacha from our paper how long something has to be left uncovered to be also because of giloi. This is overnight. If it's left overnight, then that's a problem of giloi.
Well, there's a different reason also when it comes to like onions. Like I think
onions is a totally different story. It's not because of giloi. It's not because of snakes.
The onions, eggs, and I forget what else there is. There's something else with that.
Yeah, and I actually don't know what that is for. I'm not clear on that one. I
My
think we
wife,
touched on it once when I was doing the kashrus course, but
I think my wife
uh,
has. I think what she does is she has like a red onion. She's using half of it, wants to save it, so she puts it in like
hmm,
some olive
yeah,
oil.
wrap it up in a plastic bag or something.
Puts olive oil in the dish with it or something like that. It has to be whatever. All right.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, hey Shir Hamayim Magulin. So how much water um is can you dilute Mayim Magulin? Okay, Kadesh Tovat Bahimamara. Enough that would dilute the poison. Um, so what's the share of that? Rabbi Yossi Omer Bakay. Okay, what? Hey, no, let's before we get into Rabbi Yossi.
The vessel says 4 sa'ah. 40. 40, right?
40 seah. Where do you see the 40 seah and why am I
I
not
think
seeing it?
right at the end.
Mesh Befarshim.
In vessels, any quantity on the ground, 40
Okay,
sa'ah.
no, right, now this is Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi
Right.
Yossi says, but Kalim Kol Shehen is it doesn't matter how much you've got in a kli, it's not gonna be battle. But Karkos, if it's groundwater, then it's battle in 40 sa'ah, which is coincidentally the same shear as a mikveh.
Right.
Uh-huh. Which makes the makes it battle. Okay.
Okay. Hazara. Hey, Aleph. Uh,
Getting there.
if a
Yeah,
saw
that looks good. Hey, Aleph looks good.
if a saw of unclean truma fell into less than 100 of chulin, or into Maisa Rishon, or into Maisa Sheni, or into hallowed produce, whether unclean or clean, they must be left to rot. If that saw was clean, it must be sold to priest at the price of truma, excluding the value of that saw. If it fell into Maisa Rishon, he must designate it truma Meiser. And if it fell into Maisa Sheni or hallowed produce, it must be redeemed. And if that chulin was unclean, it may be eaten in small cakes, or roasted, or kneaded with fruit juice, or divided among pieces of dough, so that in no single place should there be an egg's bulk. If a saw of unclean truma fell into 100 of clean chulin, Eliezer says, truma must be taken and burnt. For I say, the saw which fell in it is the saw which came up. But the Kachamim say it is nullified and should be eaten in small cakes, roasted or kneaded with fruit juice, or divided among pieces of dough, so that in no single piece should there be an egg's bulk. If a saw of clean truma fell into 100 of unclean chulin, it is neutralized and should be eaten in small cakes, or roasted, or kneaded with fruit juice, or divided among pieces of dough, so that in no single place should there be an egg's bulk. Okay.
Shvius Daladiod.
Okay. From when on is it forbidden to cut down trees in the seventh year? Beit Shammai says all trees once they bring forth, and Beit Hillel says carob trees once they droop, vines once they produce kernels, olive trees once they blossom, and all other trees once they bring forth. And all trees may be cut down when the tithing season arrives. How much ought an olive tree produce so that it may not be cut down? A quarter. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says all according to the olive tree. The two white figs, the seventh applies in the second year because they ripen once in 3 years. Rabbi Yehuda says the seventh year applies to Persian figs in the following year, the seventh year, because they ripen once in 2 years. They said to him it was not stated except in regard to white figs. If one buries loaf in the ground in the seventh year, Reb Meir says it may not be less than 2 sa'as, three tefakim in height, and one tefak of earth over it. But the Kachamim say it may not be less than 4 kavs, or 1 tefak in height, and 1 tefak of earth over it. And he must bury it in ground trodden by people.
To ensure that this is not going to be grown and not seen as planting in the Shemitah. Okay. Brachas. Dalid Hey.
If someone was riding on a donkey, he must dismount. If he is unable to, he must turn his face. If he is unable to turn his face, he shall direct his heart toward the Holy of Holies. If someone was sitting on a boat or in a wagon or on a raft, he shall direct his heart toward the Holy of Holies. Reb Eliezer ben Azariah states the Musaf Tefillah is only recited with the city congregation. But could come and say with or without the city congregation, and Rabbi Yehuda says in his name, wherever there is a local congregation, the individual playing alone is exempt from reciting the Musaf Tefillah.
And we say lahalacha that doesn't matter if you're where you are, if you whether you're davening in the city or somewhere where there are no Jews. If you're davening biyachid, you still say Musaf. Okay.
Yeah, so I just thought that about Musaf, and I wanted to tell you, as a paper here, I don't know if you do this or you don't, but Yom Yerushalayim, they're having they're calling it a festive, Arvia Chagigit.
Tonight.
Yeah, 7:45.
7:45. Yes, actually, let me put that into my diary.
Tomorrow chakras will be 6:20.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the reminder.
Okay. The hive, Yud Aleph. If a hive of lying on its side outdoors and an olive-sized piece from a corpse is located below or above it, everything directly below or above the olive-sized piece becomes tameh. But anything that is not directly below or above the olive-sized piece and whatever is inside the hive remains tahor. If a piece of course is inside the hive, everything becomes tameh. If the hide is one tefach above the ground and there is tumah below or above it, everything becomes tameh except for that which is inside the hive. If the tumah is inside the hive, everything becomes tameh. In what case does this apply? When the hive is a utensil. However, if the hive was broken and stuffed with straw, or if it contains 40 sa'ah, according to the Chachamim, and an olive-sized piece of corpse is located underneath the hive, utensils directly below the piece of corpse, as deep as one can go, become tameh. If the piece of corpse is above the hide, utensils directly above the piece of corpse up to the sky becomes tameh. If the piece of corpse is inside the hive, only that which is inside the hive becomes tameh. If the hive is one tefach above the ground and there is tumah below it, whatever is below the hive becomes tameh. If the tumah is inside the hive, then whatever is inside it becomes tameh. And if the tumah is above the hive, utensils directly above it up to the sky becomes tameh. If the hive is sitting on the bottom and it is a utensil and there is a tumah below it, inside or above the hive, tumah penetrates upward and downward. If the hive is a handbreadth above the ground, or it is covered, or it is upside down, and there is tumah below, inside, or above the hive, everything becomes tameh. Is that it? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Adios. Zayin hey.
Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Yachim, leader of Chadar, testified regarding a jug of katas ashes that one placed in it upon a sheretz, that the ashes are tameh. For Reb Eliezer rules the ashes are tahor. Reb Papias testified regarding one who declared 2 terms of Naziris, that if he shaved for the first Naziris on day 30, then he shaves for the second Naziris on day 60. But if he shaved on day 60 minus 1, he has discharged his obligation because day 30 is reckoned for him in the count. The Yeshua and Reb Papias testified concerning the offspring of Shalamin, that one should offer it as a Shalamin. For Reb Eliezer says that the offspring of a Shalamin is not offered as a Shalamin, and it could come and say it is offered. Reb Papias says, I testify that we had a cow that was a Shalamin sacrifice, and we ate it on Pesach, and we ate its offspring as a Shalamin on the festival. They testified about the boards of professional bakers on which loaves of bread are shaped, that they are susceptible to becoming tameh. The Reb Eliezer rules them tahor. They testified about an oven that someone cut into sections and put sand between one section and the other, that is susceptible to becoming tameh, because Reb Eliezer rules it tahor.
And that, by the way, is the Tano Shel Achnai, the one that Rabbi Eliezer got himself excommunicated over.
They testified that we may intercalculate a month into the year during the entire Adar, because this Chachamim used to say until Purim. They testified that we may intercalculate a month into the year conditionally, and a story happened with Rabbi Gamliel that he went to obtain authorization from the governor in Syria and was delayed in coming back, and they intercalculated a month into the year with the stipulation that Rabbi Gamliel would approve it. And upon his return, we declared, I approve, and it turned out that it became a leap year.
Okay, I can.
Okay.
Right, we're in Chagiga, approaching the end of Seder Moed.
Aleph.
Aleph base.
Excuse me?
Aleph base.
Aleph base?
Yeah, we started Chagiga yesterday.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Beis Shammai said the Olias Riyah must be worth at least 2 silver miles, and the Shalmei Hagiga at least 1 silver mile. Where Beis Hillel says the Olas Riyah must be worth at least 1 silver mile, and the Shalmei Hagiga at least 2.
The difference between the two is what they see as the ikar. Is it the bringing an ola to Hashem, or is it the food that the Baalim are going to eat? So Beis Hillel is saying that it's more important that the people should eat well.
Olos which are not obligatory may be brought during Kol Moed. All olos may be brought only from unconsecrated funds, while shlamim may be purchased with tithe money. Concerning the kagiga brought on the first day of Pesach, Beis Shammai says it may be purchased only with unconsecrated money, and Beis Hillel says it may be purchased with tithe money. Yisraelim discharge their obligation with vow offerings, gift offerings, or the animal tithe. And Kohanim fulfill their obligation with sin offerings, guilt offerings, firstborn of animals, and the breast and thigh of shlamim, but not with fowl offerings nor with meal offerings.
They fulfill their obligation of Shalmei Simcha with things that they had already promised during the year, and they can bring them on the regel, and that they can actually keep their obligation of Aliyah Regel and having a Shalmei Simcha during the regel. And the Kohanim can even fulfill it with the chatas offerings that people bring, or the gifts that people give to the Kahuna, because it's because they yotze they have the chova of Shalmei Simcha. Interesting. Okay. Zero.
Okay. Do you have a minute or two?
Uh,